Hello friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Rohit Bapat. Before I begin this next episode of Let's Talk Book, please go through my channel. I post videos about many things: music, books, tourism, travel, photography, like almost anything. Then wildlife. So if you like my channel, please subscribe, and if you like any of the videos, please hit the like button. That's it. Let's start with this episode of Let's Talk Book. Today I'm going to talk about a book called Animal Farm by George Orwell. And as you can see from the cover, it's almost clear what this book is all about. And if you buy this from any of the printing companies, I mean, lots of companies print this book. Penguin is there, lots of things, but you'll see a common theme on the front page. I've bought this from the Classics Fingerprint Classics. It was the cheapest one that I got. So, and the name George Orwell is actually not the real name of the author. His real name is Eric Arthur Blair, and he was born on June 25th, 1903, in Bihar. That's British India of that time. And this book was written between November 1943 to February 1944. So you can imagine the time in which the book was written. It was the time of World War II, lots of turbulence, lots of philosophical things happening in the world, lots of new theories coming into the picture. There was Russia, there was USA, there was UK, then there was colonies and Spain and lots of things, lots of churning going on of that time. So before I begin about my review about this book, I will recommend some prerequisites before reading this book, because if you do not know some of the backgrounds of some of the theories and some of the sociologies and the history of certain things, then you will not understand this book, this novel at all, because this is a satire. Now, to understand a satire, you have to understand the topic first. That's the premise of any satire, that you have to know the story before you go and watch or read a satire. So this is a satire of his time, and it's typically about communism. So, before you read this novel, I will definitely recommend to go through some of the history of communism, the times of Lenin, the times of Karl Marx, the time of Stalin, and the history of Russia, and the history of this communist regimes that were formed at that time. The Chinese communism was coming up, and those were the times actually that the reader has to know a little bit about first before really reading this book, so that you'll put everything into perspective about this book. Otherwise, I'm afraid you will not understand anything. So before you read the book, go through the history of communism, go through the history of philosophy of communism, and how it worked, how it started, and how this communism got the popular what do you say popular acceptance in many parts of the world, and how it worked, and how did that happen. Because the basic plot, now I'm not going to give any spoilers as such, but what this book is all about is, it's about a farm which is ruled by corrupt and bad-minded people, human beings, and the animals in the farm. They start thinking that uh, they are given bad choices. They are treated unfairly. They work too hard, and the returns are too less. That's where the everything uh, begins, kind of rebellion. That's it. I'm not going to speak more about that. Read the book to know what I'm talking about. But this is the basic plot, that animals think that the farm, which actually runs on their shoulders, on their hard work, should be run by the animals themselves, and humans should be thrown out. So this is the whole premise. I mean, I can go talk about communism for a longer time, but the what I think one of the main reason why communism got popular support is because uh, communism actually talks about equality, but not in the sense that equality should be among the basic needs of the human being and not the output of that human being, because I cannot compare the intelligence of Einstein and what do you say, the valor of Napoleon. I just cannot. These are two different people and they should be treated differently. That's it. But both of them are human beings, so they all should have equal human rights. Laws should be equal and all that. That's fine. But the basic the communism got support because it is always easier to say that somebody is exploiting you. That's my view about the communism. And to talk about the book, this is the exact point where it begins to turn around in that farm, the Manor farm, and how it rolls out, how animals throw out the human beings, and how they form their own sort of regime, and it's called Animal Farm, and how this equality propagates, and people are having new dreams, they're having new um, adventurous life, all sorts of aims and goals of life and what they can do and all those dreams and all that. So it all begins with that, and then what happens later on. And it's, to me, if you ask me, this is the darkest satire I've ever read in my life. I mean, I've read quite a lot of satires, but this one is probably the darkest one that I've read. I mean, this is a too much. This is just too much for me, because at one point I can actually see human beings in place of animals. And now this is the beauty of George Orwell, because he has written the novel in such a way, the narration of the novel is in such a way that the animals show some traits of human beings, but they keep their animalness intact. So, I mean, this as a writer myself, I think this is a genius work, because at one side you still have to portray what will happen in the human world, and what if the animals start thinking about human beings, and at one point they're still animals. They're still uh, animals with all their animalness, kind of, with they don't have thumbs to hold down anything, and they don't have enough what do you say, intelligence at some point. But while going on, each animal, while reading, you'll understand that each animal actually represents one section of the society. I mean, that's what my interpretation is, and that is done so fantastically well that I was just taken aback. Like, how can someone write something like this complicated in such a different manner? It's just different book. It's just totally different. It's and being a bit familiar with this whole capitalism and communism and socialistic views and all that, it I kind of relate myself and what is happening also, and what has happened in India in last 70 years, because India technically is a socialist. or left-leaning country, basically, which had some communist values and some socialist values in place. And there are some merits and demerits about every system, just like capitalism has. But I've seen those, and we are still going through that phase. If you ask me, Animal Farm is actually more relevant today than it was around 30 years ago, because 30 years ago it was all about democracy, capitalism, free market, blah blah blah. But now that in almost all the world where there's democracy, the right wingers are coming up. So the leftists have started showing their might and strength and all that, and it is kind of capturing the sentiments of the people, because it the main premise is that the rich is rich because he has sucked up some money from somebody else. I mean, that's that's a very raw and crude way of putting it, but that's what they tell. That's what usually they talk about, and that's what animals say, that we work 10, 12, 20 hours in the farm. We plow the farm, then we roll the carts, and we do everything. Basically, we give the wool. By the, I mean, sheep say, like the chickens say, okay, we give the food and eggs and all that. And what we get? What do we get? We get nothing. We technically get nothing. We don't get security. We don't get shelter. We don't get food. We don't get water, and we just get exploited. It's exploited all the time. So that's where it all begins, and how it works out, then how the and when the farm is established, how they set the laws, and ultimately how it turns out to be. Uh, I don't want to give too much details, but any regime, has to have a power center, a center where all the power of decision making lies. And no matter how equal you are among the people, still there are some people who are above on that rank of equality, and the commoners lie somewhere here. And you see what I'm saying, because one of the most important and most famous quote from George Orwell's Animal Farm is, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. This is so true. This is so true. And in 1940s, mid 40s, George Orwell was seeing this, what is happening around the world, what is happening in Stalin's Russia, what's happening in other parts of the country, of the world, what's happening in Argentina, and what's happening in Italy, and with all the Mussolinis and Rommels and whatnot. So, as being a pure, what do you say, pro democracy, anti fascism, and pro free market and open societies and all that, George Orwell has chosen this way of criticizing, not criticizing, but describing the whole system, actually, how it works, and what are the good points and bad points of that system. And I guess readers will have their own opinions about whether this is true or not true, depending on their own experiences. But if you ask me, I think what he has written, in India at least, we have seen that this happens. This happens. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. That's how it is. That's how the life is. That's why I like this book. I will definitely recommend uh, Animal Farms. I will give it, I don't know, almost around 5 out of 5, because the plot is fantastic, the narration is fantastic, the language is kind of simpler. I was expecting more difficult language, but that's fine. It's simpler for the people and it's easier to read. Then the chapters are just 10 chapters, crisp and clear. The story never lags or it never slows down, it's just too fast. The characters are very interesting, and most of all, connecting animals with human beings, that's just something out of the world. I that Now this book has jumped up among the top three books that I've read so far. So if you are interested in reading the Animal Farm, please do go ahead and let me know what your views are, because this book is more, I mean, it sounds like Animal Farm, but it's more than that. It's not just about animals, it's not just about humans also. It's basically about how society is, how nature is, and how the human instincts work, how the human nature is. Okay, so uh, if you read the book, please let me know if my review was helpful. If you have any suggestions, comments, and recommendations, please do let me know. And if you like the video, please hit the click button, and please do subscribe to my channel so that you'll get notified immediately when I post some new video on almost any topic. And if you have any suggestions, please do let me know. Thank you.